Hi guys, this is Ghostly Loz here with another Shadowverse deck walkthrough. The deck I'm going to go through today is a runecraft deck, and it's called D-Shift, which is short for Dimension Shift. This deck is actually my most favourite deck to play. It's one of the first decks I tried to create, but I was missing a couple of the key cards, so it wasn't very powerful, and I gave up trying to play it quite early on. I do try and play this deck whenever I can, but at the rank I'm at currently on the ladder, it's probably 70-80% aggro decks. The other decks that aren't aggro are kind of like mid-rangey decks. There's very few decks that this deck is very strong against. This deck's actually like a combo deck. It will generally tries to aim to win on turn 9 or 10. Just outright win the game no matter what the opponent does. So it's a control deck beater. It will beat any slow deck, any unoptimized deck. It will punish them, but it does lose to aggro decks because they tend to win before turn 7. You will have a very hard time trying to beat these kind of decks, control the board. Even mid-range decks, if they're on the aggro end, will be quite difficult to beat. But if they don't have a strong start, if they kind of struggle a little bit, if they struggle to beat you by turn 9 or 10, you will most likely win the game. If you start the game with god draws, you can win on turn 6 or 7 with this deck. You can just combo off. It is possible, but you obviously need the god draws. But the reason to play this deck is it's very fun, it's very difficult, it gives you a lot of different choices. So yeah, let's get into the deck. So I'll start off by starting with the key cards in this deck. So this is what the deck's named after, Dimension Shift. So this card is gain an extra turn after this one. Subtract X from the cost of this card. So the spell boosters subtract 1 more. So essentially every spell you play in this game reduces this card's cost by 1. So you want to draw this card early if possible. If you draw 2 or more of these in the early game, that's a god draw and you virtually win the game. But essentially by turn 9-10 you want to have this card playable, at least one of these cards playable, preferably 2 or more. And you want to combine it by playing this card, Flame Destroyer. This is another one that subtracts X from the cost of this card. When you play spells this becomes cheaper. Kind of like the new giants, the new arcane giants in Hearthstone. When you play spells, it reduces the cost, but this takes it to a whole new level. So essentially, what you want to do on around turn 9-10, you want to play a bunch of these, play Dimension Shift, and then you can attack next turn with these. Maybe even evolve them, play other spells to reduce the cost, to do more damage. And you essentially, by chaining a series of these together, you combo them out in one turn, no matter what they've got on the board, and you can evolve this into quite a big taunt, smash it. Next turn, attack with both of them, Dimension Shift again, and you can bring their health down to 0 with a combination of Dimension Shifts and just win outright. There's no way for them to win. So I mean, the aim of this deck is to play a lot of cheap spells, play a lot of spell boost cards like this card, which spell boosts the card in your hand and draws a card. Draw a lot of cards in your deck to basically get your combo pieces, reduce them down nice and early, and then win the game. You've got this Merlin, which basically makes this deck viable, makes this deck much more consistent. Merlin, basically when you play Merlin, she'll put a random spell with spell boost from the deck into your hand. So play a lot of spell boost cards in this deck, but if you're missing your combo pieces, it makes it much more likely that you're going to hit them with this card. Also, when you evolve Merlin, it gives you another spell boost card, and then when you attack with Merlin, it spell boosts the card in your hand. So this is the most versatile card in the deck. You need to be running at least 2 of these in the deck for it to be viable. So yeah, that basically runs the deck, makes it much more consistent that you're going to draw these. You have a lot of card draw, so this is a spell boost, draw 2 cards. You can get this down to 0, draw 2 cards for free, spell boost all your other cards. Play a lot of cheap spells, so you play Angelic Snipe, which is deal 1 damage to the enemy. It can be correct if you know you're going to combo next turn, or you really need the spell booster card in your hand to just deal 1 to the face. I mean, obviously it's advantageous to try and pick them off to survive a bit longer, pick off 2 1s or 3 1s or 1 health on big minions, but it's sometimes correct to just Angelic Snipe the face. You've got Insight, which is 1 mana draw a card, very useful spell to have in the early game. Spell boosts all your other cards, allows you to draw through your deck. Now, Scrap Iron Smelter combos with Petrification. Now, there's 2 ways that you can really go with this deck. Now, I favoured this side more. I think it's more consistent personally, and it gives you some way, even though it's still a good matchup for you, it gives you some way to banish enemy amulets from the game. It gives you some way to interact with Seraph, so that they can't combo off, just in case they do get that off on you. I mean, this deck is generally faster than that deck, so it shouldn't be something to worry about, but it does give you that edge. It does give you a way to deal with problematic minions. I really like it. Also, this gives you a Scrap Golem is essentially a 0/2 ward, so it gives you some way of holding off against the early game. And adding like an extra blocker, and you can evolve that and turn it into a 2/4 and do some extra things that way. So I quite like this way. Another way that you would go if you weren't going to do it this way would be you could use the what's the card called? Let's see if we can find it. I think it's 3 mana. It's basically you throw up a 5/5 giant to block, to stall out summon ice form. This is an ice golem, sorry, not giant. So this is another card that's quite common to run in this deck. You usually run 2 or 3 of them. I've opted to go for the earth way. I think it's personally more consistent, but this is not, because this stays in play. It serves pretty much the same purpose. You essentially play this to stall. So what this does is it summons a 5/5 golem with ward for a turn. Basically stalls for a turn, which is exactly what you want in this deck. I mean, you can go this way. I'm not really sure which way is more powerful. I prefer going the Earth Sigil and Petrification way. I mean, you are missing out because this is a spell, so this does spell boost. This isn't a spell, so it doesn't spell boost, so you are losing out on that. Kind of on the fence which way. I mean, instead of running Petrification, you will run, it'll be right near the end, you'll run this card, Fiery Embrace. So destroy an enemy follower. So this is another card that spell boosted down. Rather than Petrification, they serve pretty much the same function. I prefer this, but I mean it's cheaper. I mean, this is another card that quite a lot of the time is going to be a waste of time. And you can also accidentally grab it using Merlin when you don't want it, so it detracts away from being able to grab the combo pieces with Merlin. So this can be quite clunky in your hands, so I tend to not like this card. I tend to prefer running Petrifications, but I mean you could run the Ice Golem card. You could run Summon Ice Form and Fiery Embrace, I think it was called. Yeah, so you can run that, or you can run this Petrification Earth Golem. So there are some options that you have in this deck. The rest of the deck is basically stall. So I mean, this is quite a good card. You evolve him, it puts a Crimson Sorcery in your hand, which is a 1 mana, deal 3 damage. So that can be nice to either clear the board or get a bit of extra damage in your face to combo off next turn. So that's quite useful. And you can also evolve him and use him to attack and clear the board. You've got Conjure Golem, just gives you a bit of early game presence. It's also a spell, so it spell boosts other cards. Magic Missile, very useful card, deal 1 damage, very similar to Angelic Snipe, but it also draws you through the deck. Wind Blast, very useful spell boost card. If you have this early in your deck, it can become very powerful, very useful removal, very flexible. This card, very nice card. Return a card that costs 2 play points or less to the player's hand, draw a card. So if you're fishing for cards in your deck, you can bounce back something on your side. So quite often, while I'm playing, I'll bounce back. Very annoying. I'll bounce back Scrap Iron Smelter, either the Sigil or the actual Golem, and play him again if he's weakened, or if I just need something to get a bit of card draw, or something to spell boost. You can use it to bounce back enemy cards that cost 2 or less. So it's very useful on if you're facing Stormhaven and you want to bounce back their Beastcaller Aria right before it's about to pop. That's very annoying for them. That will cost them a huge amount of tempo and can win you the game. Overall, very powerful, very flexible card, and it draws a card as well, so it allows you to cycle through your deck, so very powerful. This card is generally quite a weak card in the deck, but it's necessary. Spell boost the card in your hand 2 times, so you'll generally want to save this for use on your combo pieces, but it also allows you to hunt through the deck. I've been through Petrification, Merlin, I've been through, very powerful card. Fire Chain, this is also a very powerful spell boost card, very necessary for trying to hold off against aggro. So I mean, they've built up a nice board, but I mean, if you've been powering this up by turn 5 or 6 when they're about to win, you can get off a huge like 10 mana Fire Chain and just clear their whole board. It's the most efficient board clear you've got in the deck, very powerful, allows you to hold off. Fate's Hand, I think I've been over, very effective way of drawing through your deck. So that's it basically. It's a very powerful combo deck. You'll most likely have drawn through the majority of your deck by turn 9 or 10, and you'll have all the combo pieces you need, and they'll be sufficiently spell boosted down to allow you to clear, to one turn kill the enemy without them being able to do anything about it. It's a very annoying deck to play against, because if they get their combo off, there's literally nothing you can do to stop it. It will just kill you in one turn. There's no armor in Shadowverse, there's no way to go above 20 health, so there's not really any prevention you can do against this deck. If they get the combo off, they win. But on the flip side of that, it is quite a hard deck to pilot well. There's a lot of decisions you have each turn. So yeah, I'm going to show a demonstration of this deck in action now. I hope you enjoy.